Councillors, welcome. We'll go live, eh?
This meeting is being recorded.
Good everyone, welcome to the Ordinary Planning Committee meeting for the 9th of September 2021. I'll declare the meeting open and call for apologies.
Francois.
We have an apology from Francois as well as Councillor Cogan. Are there any additional apologies? Someone move, please, that the apologies be received and accepted. Moved Councillor Kennedy and seconded Councillor Davidson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The resolution's carried. Thank you very much. The second item on the agenda is the declarations of interest. The interest register has been circulated on Microsoft Teams. If you have any amendments or updates, please make those known to Di and Meg as they work through the agenda today. The third item is a call for any urgent items not on the agenda. Is there anything urgent that needs to be added to today's meeting?
I wonder if we could, would you mind discussing this erosion in behind Revel Street? Because I'd like to, I think we need to keep working with Regional Council and pushing them on it because it's quite serious.
Sure. So with the consent of the committee, I will add that in as a discussion item towards the end of the agenda under staff reports.
Yeah.
Happy with that, Your Worship?
Thank you.
We'll just move that as an agenda item to come on forward as urgent item that has not previously been notified on the agenda. So moved by His Worship the Mayor. Someone prepared to second that? Councillor Davidson. All those in favour?
Aye.
As against, the resolution's carried. Thank you, Your Worship. We'll consider that as part of the meeting. The fourth matter is the minutes of the previous meetings. So the previous meetings have been circulated on Microsoft Teams to councillors and no amendments have been noted. So the circulated copies stand. And asked in relation to the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee that was held on the 3rd of June 2021 that a councillor moves the resolutions carried. Thank you, Your Worship. We'll consider that. Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Davidson put the resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed Planning and Regulatory Services Committee meeting minutes of the 3rd of June 2021. Thank you very much, councillors and staff, for getting us through the administrative parts of the meeting. We now move into the action list, which is on pages 5 through 6 of your agenda. And I welcome Fiona Scadden, the Planning Manager, to speak to this report.
Good afternoon, councillors. So all of these matters are in progress and actually all of them will be covered in the update item, but I'll run through the matters. So we've got the Town Centre Plan draft. So there's more conversation around this in the update report. That's still in progress. We've got the dedicated crossings, the pedestrian crossings within the town centre. That is captured in the town centre draft and again will be covered off in the update. The mining consent applications, so there were two parts to this. One was around making sure that we've got a really foolproof approach within the planning department to make sure that any planning consents or consent applications that come over our desk are notified to Destination Westland. We've created a process for that and that's running quite smoothly. The second part of that, I believe, was a conversation between CEOs around doing an audit of the levels of mining applications that may have come through in the past and where that sits. We've got the Franz Joseph Master Plan conversation, so again that will be updated further. The matter that we will cover off mostly today is around the I guess where the strategy sits with the new combined district plan and the part that sits as a strategy under the LGA with us as a council. And then we've talks about the mining consents applications, which goes further into the CE conversation between the two CEs around doing that audit and finding out what has happened and what will happen in future, with making sure, I guess, that Destination Westland is aware of any of the mining consents that come through council.
Just through the chair, I can give you an update too. So I have talked to the CEO of Destination Westland. She is in favour of doing an audit, and I've offered support to do that. It comes down to her getting her board to approve. I don't see that being a problem, so I'll follow that up with her directly.
Thank you, Fiona and Simon, for the report in relation to the action list. And note that most of the matters are recommended to be removed as they sit within future work streams that are already being undertaken or planned, or future agenda items. So unless there are any questions from councillors, I'm just scrolling through. Anyone indicate they want to talk to or question anything on the agenda, action list? No. Being none, I ask that council please move that the updated action list be received. Councillor Kennedy, thank you very much. And Councillor Davidson, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Simon. There are no presentations to this meeting. However, there is a workshop at the conclusion of this meeting today to consider the town centre strategy. So we'll move through to now the 7th item on the agenda, staff reports. And a welcome back to the screen, Planning Manager Fiona Skidden, to talk to the current projects update report, which is found on pages 7 through 17 of your agendas, Councillor.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as read, but I will work through the headings one at a time so that any conversation that might come up can be discussed as we work through, if that works best. So with regard to current projects, we have the town centre plan. So noted that much of this work has now crossed over into the Hokitika Town Centre Urban Design Guidelines, which is in draft form at the moment. That will form part of the combined district plan. This generally sets the scene for the design standards for private, so commercial buildings. So if there are new builds in Hokitika or rebuilds, how they should look, what the frontages would be like, making sure that we get that continuity of verandas, that kind of aspect. And then separate to that, we will have split out the strategy for council and council-owned land and what we're trying to achieve with our streetscape and gardens and the like. So it's kind of ended up in 2 work streams now. Many of the actions that have been considered in the past are getting underway, but we do want to still design up some more streetscape. That conversation obviously will carry over into our workshop and discussion after this meeting. Yeah, are there any questions around that now, or are we happy just to carry that over?
It appears that there are no questions at this time.
Okay, so the next item was the Revel Street trial. So we had a workshop around the next stage of the Revel Street trial. What that resulted in was I guess a subcommittee of this committee being formed with councillors having a look at a preliminary concept design. That conversation has happened and been delivered and been agreed to. Again, this can carry over to some discussion after this main meeting, but the idea being that there is now a concept that we can work through that will bring several different work streams together. So we've got works that were already in the plan for intersection works around Weld Street and Revel Street, and then we've got works that were on the go for footpaths. We've got works that we were looking at around town centre lighting. So it would be bringing some of those matters alongside what we were looking at with the one way, and seeing if we can kind of run them concurrently so that they become one package and upgrade that street in one big go. Yeah, questions around that?
Paul?
Thank you. Do we have any estimated costs yet?
That is still being finalised.
Broad Park.
So we've got, like I say, we've got a whole lot of different activity centres going on here in terms of the actual Revel Street project and how that sits under the town centre plan. We have a budget allocated that has been allocated for that purpose. This year, off the top of my head, this year we had 100,000 in, and we've got carryovers from last year.
So we still don't have a ballpark figure for this Revel Street trial?
It would have to come in under that, and then we've got our other budgets around the minor amendments to the roading, the curb. So we've obviously different projects within council come under different budgets, and those other budgets were going to happen within the town centre. They've just been pulled forward in this if we're going to run it together.
Right. Yeah, it's just that, I mean, I was out of step with this anyway. But the trial was, of course, sold to us as being for $50,000 budget. And then that got stretched out to $100,000 under the town centre concept, which is a little bit specious, really, to in my view. But however, the decision is to go forward with this, and so this is a better plan. But I'm still concerned about the cost of what's supposed to be a trial.
Can I just clarify that when we first looked at the coding, it hadn't been allocated to the correct, that was me pulling a full picture, and the projects that, for example, the bollards belong to, I hadn't separated out. But when I have, that has taken the previous Revel Street spend down to, I think it came in at 27,000 out of what had been allocated. There was 100,000 allocated for town centre for last year. The rest of that was not spent, so now that carries over.
I wonder if I can just jump in here too to say that councillors have requested those costs, Paul, at the workshop earlier this week, and they'll be circulated once they're available. The update at that time was staff were in the process of gathering that information, and as soon as it wasn't and it was approved by the CE, it would be circulated for information to councillors.
Yes, just that it potentially will become a rather expensive trial, and it could get to the point, of course, at the end of the trial where, well, we've spent this much money, so that's that. Let's make it permanent. However, let's see what falls out of it.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other questions in relation to that matter? Bearing in mind those matters will be picked up also as part of the town centre discussion at the conclusion of the meeting. Councillor Kennedy.
Just when is the expiry of our current 6-month trial?
So from the beginning, the original 6 months would have ended at the end of August.
So in theory, it shouldn't be one way, is that right? Am I missing something? Or have we extended it?
My directive was to extend it.
At the council, okay. And how long is it extended for?
That has not been determined at this point in time.
Okay. Look, I haven't been to Hokitika for a while, but has anything actually happened other than those yellow bollards being removed?
So no, a stall was put on it basically with the conversation that happened from the workshop. It was a matter of putting it on hold really until the concept designs came out so that it could be a more holistic approach when the next stage gets delivered. So those concepts have been, obviously, we're part of this report now.
And the next stage is expected to be delivered when?
Once all the approvals have happened, we have been told that we should be able to have decks on the ground within a month.
Right. So, yeah, I suppose it is dragging on a bit, and I don't think Paul and his concerns are too far off the mark. Anyway, thank you.
Our intention is to have any works underway ready for, what did we determine, prior to Christmas break, basically, so that everything should be in place by that stage, and we've got the summer to test and measure and right through.
Yeah, I suppose it's just dragging on and on and on.
Just through the chair, just to reinforce the need to have an extended trial, either make it an extended trial or to make it a decision whether the trial has been successful and make it permanent. Request that there's a resolution out of the end of this report to determine either way.
Sorry, and just Simon, because when we originally made the trial, we said we were going to go and talk to the people to see if they wanted extended and consult with those affected, but I don't know whether we've done that. Have we done that at all?
So the directive that we were given, sorry, through the chair, the directive that we were given was to create the concept plans first so that we've got something that we can actually talk to and explain where we're going if we're going to go back and have that conversation about extension. And that was to go before the selected councillors, which has just happened. So that consultation hasn't happened as yet because the concepts are just getting approved now.
It seems like we're going to go ahead with it anyway without talking to the people. Just just reading between the lines and what's
there's definitely room for there to be adjustments based on those conversations. I believe that the Mayor had some reasonably in-depth conversations previously that helped form some of these decisions as well.
Are we not going to ask them bits of paper so we as councillors can see what they say though before we approve it, like we do with, let's say, this 3 waters thing or a long-term plan questionnaire?
Yeah. That's the difference between a consultative process and a trial. I think certainly there'll be engagement. If you would like to see the feedback, that's absolutely fine. We definitely gather feedback as we go.
I don't think we can't go without the feedback. Just moving forward, it would be a bit wrong, I think. Anyway, sorry, that's it from
Sorry, technical issue. We've got some discussion that needs to be had on this matter. So, a direction, the CE seeking a direction from the committee. So what I think we'll do is we pause on this at this stage, work through the rest of the report and then pick it up if that's all right. Okay, so we also had, as one of the topics, the dedicated pedestrian crossings, which again will get picked up as part of that town centre plan conversation. That will be part of the streetscape and where they go and how they operate. We had discussion around wayfinders for the town centre. So so this is the Western District Council, the eyesight type wayfinders and where to find facilities within the town centre. Again, I have some concept designs that we can discuss through the workshop. I think would probably be the easiest. And that way I can share my screen and make it clear what sort of options we've got. Franz Joseph's strategy. So this again is quite similar to what's happened with the town centre plan. So we will have rules that will, within the combined district plan, they will be around zoning and around what activities can be undertaken in what places. At present, those are still very much in formation stage because we're still gathering the information to put layers together to determine the zoning. So at the moment, we're in the process of pulling together noise contours, potential hazard layers, and then I guess potential for town growth as well, having to consider all of those things and where things are best placed within
that zoning format. So that has not been finalised yet because we're still waiting for some of the final information. We don't want to be putting out, I guess, a representation of where, say, for example, we would like to put housing and then find out that actually it's putting it in a more dangerous spot, or that it's going to have more impact from the noise from the heliport or something along those lines. So we're very, very close, but I'm just waiting. I've got regional council helping me pull that together through part of the district plan process. Then separate to that, we would have the strategy and concept like we've discussed with the Hokitika Town Centre, where it would be around the streetscape and the aspirations for creating a nice town centre for Franz Joseph and what that would look like and what standards might be for that. So it's, again, kind of split into two work streams, but it will still be discussed and notified together through the community so that they're seeing the whole package.
Do any councillors have a question in relation to that matter? Councillor Kennedy and then Paul.
Yeah, so when can the community of Franz Joseph expect to see some clarity about their future? Like, do we have any time frame at all?
We definitely have a time frame because we have to have all of this resolved by December to have the plan signed off. But what has changed is we've gone from having a discussion document that threw a whole lot of what if scenarios out there to getting to the point that we've actually got so much research together now that we are in a position where we actually can put some proposed zoning forward if we just pull these last layers in, which will give more clarity to the community around what the proposal is, as opposed to just saying, oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do the other thing. So that's part of why it's been held off just a little bit longer. But like I say, the main notification will happen in January for the district plan, but we want to pull forward so that we're having the conversations with the community about what's going into the district plan proposal to then go to the wider community, if that makes sense.
I suppose it kind of it does, Fiona, but it's like another thing that's dragging on a bit. And I personally, for the people of Franz Joseph, they would much prefer you be working on this rather than deciding what colour you can paint a building in Hokitika. It's beyond urgent to get this done for me personally. And it just seems like you say we're going to be done in December and then January. And it's almost like, I know you are working on it, but it seems like right at the end it's going to be rushed together. But yeah, keep working on it. Thank you. It is a concern it's taken so long.
I definitely understand from the outside how that looks. Just to give some clarity and hopefully some comfort to you, that is because we're gathering, I guess, more stringent information in the background than what we've had before. So we're getting more clarity to be able to give the community more clarity when we put our presentation out there, instead of it just being a if button maybe.
Thank you, Fiona. That's totally fair enough. Yeah.
Paul.
I had similar concerns to Councillor Kennedy. It has, for various reasons, dragged on, not least of which was, of course, the COVID lockdown last year, and that got in the middle when we had the consultant on board and we're all set gung-ho to sit down and start this. And then the consultants moved on. I understand that that's not happening anymore. It's all been done through in conjunction, as Fiona said, with the Untitled plan, which is fine, but a little bit concerned at the Untitled plan committee meeting last week. There just seemed to be a little bit of confusion as to who was doing what on it, and so I know that was being sorted out, but I was a bit surprised, to be honest, because I thought that it had been handed over to the plan committee and planners, and that was underway. However, so there was some catch up to do, and I'm just concerned about the input at this. We can't call it early stage, but at this stage, from the locals on the ground, and where is that? I mean, it was the process that we had last year. There was going to be a like a working party. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Hartshorn, and some of the ones from Friends Inc. and et cetera. They were going to sit down and kind of draft up a rough blueprint, but that doesn't seem to be happening now.
Okay, through the chair, I'll just take the opportunity to explain the confusion for the committee, just to, oh, sorry, not the committee, the project team for district plan, just to give some background. So where the confusion lay was with the fact that I am doing the strategy part, which is the concept. So originally, this was all to become a plan change to our original district plan, which meant that the whole lot had to be a special consultative process, which meant that I was delivering the whole package to the community, including the zoning, the rules, all of the things that would sit in the district plan. What's happened now is, because we've fast-tracked the plan, the rules and zoning and all of those matters will sit in the district plan. They're already being worked through in that process. So what I'm doing as a separate package, as in my part of the work, is around the strategy and the concept plans. They will pull together, but the project team aren't responsible for doing that part. So they were probably a little bit allergic to that idea if they thought that was what was being proposed. But together we're working through the notification process and working through meshing the rules. And again, this is where it becomes a little bit more difficult, because it's not just the rules for Franz Joseph, it's the rules around those zones for all of the coast. So anywhere that's near the fault line, or anywhere that has, river flooding issues. So trying to work through what rules need to specifically apply to Franz Joseph and don't align with the rest of the district, or what rules would have to be, the region, and what rules would have to actually be region-wide, and what that would mean for Franz Joseph being the biggest town on the fault line. So that sits with the district plan committee, which I'm obviously having a lot to do with and working with them and feeding into that. But when it comes to the concept for what the town centre should look like and what facilities are needed, and all of those conversations, then that is sort of a side issue. So that becomes a living document that the district plan would refer to, but it's something that can be updated and changed as the town develops over time.
Through the chair, thanks, Fiona. It might give a little bit more comfort to those at Friends who've been waiting for the council to take this lead, to pull together that some form of working group that can at least have a Zoe together to talk through the issues, and before it gets legs under it, just so that we know that we're on the right track, and I'm confident that it will be, but we just need to take those people with us, and then it can, we need to get some speed on with it. But I also agree with Councillor Kennedy, though. The last thing we want is for this to be rushed, because in terms of the Tauapōtini plan, these are some of the biggest decisions to be made.
I'm hoping in the very, very near future, I'm going to have the planning tool updated that will show the spatial layers, so we can look on a map and see what the noise contours look like, what the hazard layers look like. And that would be a really good conversation point for that kind of discussion.
Yes, okay. The regional council, for instance, has pulled together this group that's looking at the flood walls, and that was called together again a few weeks ago when there was the problem with the stop bank on the south side of the Waio River being under threat, and so that worked. You know, I just think we need to have that involvement from those on the ground really soon. Thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy and Paul, for your comments. Fiona, have you got an action there in relation to picking up a consultation process with the community electronically?
Yes.
And it would be great to know, as soon as it's available, the timeline that you're working to this side of Christmas, so that could please be circulated to councillors when it's available.
Yep.
Thank you. There being no further questions, we'll move on to 2.6.
Okay, so 2.6 captures both Hokitika Racecourse and Casque. They were originally bundled together because one would affect the other in terms of sports use. We've come quite a long way since this was first put in as a heading, and we've heard very, very strongly from the community that they would like field sports to be retained at Casque. So we've progressed our thinking through the LTP. We put out a very high level indication of what Casque could be developed into in terms of showing blocks of where different activities could be undertaken. So the Hokitika Racecourse at the moment, we have undertaken an exercise to prioritise the, dangerous buildings that need to be removed. There is going to be quite a long thought out process around what buildings get removed when, because we have some up there that are still in use by some of the groups, likes of AMP, people grazing horses, different groups up there that are still using some of the areas. So we'll make sure that we work through that process. But when it comes to some of the more dangerous buildings, that will progress in this financial year. We are looking at putting together a stronger concept plan. What we heard very strongly through the community from the LTP was that there was a real passion for retaining some level of equine activity up there, and really, celebrating the area's history as a horsey site. So looking at different ways that we can incorporate that. One of the ideas that has been thrown around quite strongly is to look at kind of passive outdoor potential event space with some kind of facility up there that enables the likes of AMP, horse shows, cattle shows, whatever the case may be, and could potentially be sort of a multi-use building. So some ideas that will get pulled together. We've had some expression of interest from Canterbury Sport Canterbury around giving us a little bit of help in terms of development in the sport space of horsiness. We're going to have conversations with them and see where that leads us. But yeah, there will be a full consultative process once we get the concept design actually pulled together and something that's a bit stronger. That will also include the thought process around potential development of housing in the residential area and what that could look like and what would need to be upgraded and done to achieve that. There's been a little bit of thought in that process recently in terms of what would have to be done with infrastructure. But yeah, that there is still getting built. It's a work in progress. And because it is reasonably passive land and it is being used at the moment, it hasn't been treated quite as high priority as the likes of the Franz Joseph work. So this is something that's ticking away and we're working on it and we will keep on it, but it's not obviously quite as urgent. Casque, so we got some, like I say, very strong feedback from the public around keeping the sports fields or the premier grounds at Casque. What we wanted to look at to begin with was the idea of pulling as many sports as possible into that space so that it was, putting the resources to the best use. However, there is concern that if we do that, go too far with that actually we might end up damaging the surface and doing more damage to Casque than is necessary. Again, conversations with Sport Canterbury around that and what some ideals are and how that facility can be optimised to its best. The other conversations that happened alongside that were around a pavilion for the sports use that could be multi-purpose and potentially used for the likes of conference centre, those kind of uses. We have got work underway with the playground, so looking at upgrading the equipment. It's most likely looking at replacement like for like. The feedback that we've had from the community is that the playground is actually really functional. It's just that it's not in good shape at the moment. So when it is operating as it should and everything's open and unbroken, then yeah, the feedback has been very positive about that space. So looking at that, pulling the toilets along so that this financial year the toilets will go in near the playground, which will be a big relief to a lot of parents who have to do the kilometre dash down the fields. That will include fixing the rubber matting, putting in more rubber matting, as well as any replacements of equipment. There was conversation around the extended skate park, extending it down along parallel with Britain Street towards Stafford Street, and potentially a pump track on that and a fitness trail on the Stafford Street side. So these are all things that are in play. They will all be treated as separate stages as they get pulled along. The playground has been given the highest priority at the moment based on councillors also directing that was the strongest feedback through the LTP process, and that there was something that had been committed to previously but hadn't been actioned. So that will get underway. Are there any questions around any of those matters?
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. My question is on the concept plan. Who was preparing the concept plan? What's the person that's doing that?
So that person has not been contracted yet. We're working with Sport Canterbury. They have somebody that they work with regarding appropriate sport. So especially with the pavilions, knowing specifically what is required from a sports perspective, we'll be working with them to find who their spokespeople and concept designers are.
Okay, and the other question is there an opportunity for someone to provide a brief for the concept plan? I believe a brief would provide a better understanding and clarity to councillors and to members of the public of where we're sort of going with it.
Are we referring to Casque or Racecourse?
No, to both.
So I think Casque has got a reasonably solid brief. I think that has already been pulled together in terms of what needs to happen and how that's going to happen. The staging has not been briefed, but that doesn't form part of the concept. I don't think we need to go any further with a concept plan with Casque. I think we've had very strong feedback, and it's not difficult to imagine because it's an extension of what exists. But the racecourse, definitely starting with a blank canvas, is something that definitely needs a really strong concept. Sorry, I take that back. The pavilion would have to have a concept to make it clear what's happening there and what that would look like.
So yeah, thank you for that. So what you're sort of saying, there is a brief for the for Casque, which I'd like to see, and I probably have missed it along the line somewhere, but to provide one for the racecourse would be really good.
Okay, so in the LTP process, there was, through the consultation, there was a very brief for Casque. Is it fleshing out something like that further? Would that?
Yeah, just a clear understanding of what we're going to be doing there in terms of a plan for it.
I would like to see us have councillors closely connected to these two matters, and I think a way to do that would be to have, similar to what we're having this afternoon on Town Centre, have a similar session on these two projects. I think there's a lot of questions from councillors in the community, and I think we have the opportunity to add value into this space, Fiona. Di, if you're able to hear us, calendar something, please. And I don't think there needs to be a lot of prep work outside of what was already known. It's an opportunity to discuss the matters in more depth, I think.
Just through the chair, just to remind councillors, we've had 2 workshops on this in the past leading up to the LTP. So we can, I think the best step would be for us to design a briefing document and then get that in front of councillors.
Thank you.
I think if, with all due respect, I think it would be really good to do that the other way around. And so we're really clear and we're ensuring that some of the councillors and the council staff are very much aligned in that before that brief is crafted by staff. I think a lot of water's gone under the bridge in terms of these 2 projects. It would be good to get us back in the driving seat. Paul.
Agreed. I think it'd be worthwhile to have another councillor workshop on this. It has been well canvassed in the past, but still pretty fluid as to what the ideas are around this. As expressed in the long-term plan hearings, I think that the Racecourse is doing its job now for with the equine community in particular, and there's no rush with that. But Casque and the future of that is more of a priority, as the planning manager has said. I think what though these new toilets was a real coup for the council, getting that money through that government tourism infrastructure fund, and forward thinking as well. Putting in e-bike charges. I think that was a great move. The location can I just ask the location of those loos? There was talk last time we talked about it, and I think they were looking at a site rather close to Robbie Burns statue, but hopefully.
So, yeah, in the LTP consultation process, the conversation was around having them to the left of the entrance off Weld Street.
Weld Street.
Yeah, so there's the vehicle access off Weld Street, just to the left of that. So basically opposite the access way from the tyre swing.
So
okay.
just to confirm that it is close to the Robbie Burns statue. There was a document put into the team's folder for you to review. Councillor Davidson requested it. So where the hedge is now will be slightly moved, and it'll be put beside the swings, I think it is. So southeast corner is probably the target area. And that picks up all the playground and obviously the sporting events that are happening on the main ground.
So
yes. So through the chair. So that's how close to the Robbie Burns statue, can I ask?
Far enough away not to impact it.
Okay. Visually as well.
Yes.
Okay. You won't be able to smell anything. There's enough in this discussion, I think, in Casque to pick it up in terms of a workshop. There's playgrounds, there's playground design, there's some immediate work that could be done to make that playground actually get a lot more life out of it if we just water blasted and stained it, made it safe. There's the skate park extension, there's the fitness tracks, there's the gardens, there's the pavilion, there's a lot. And I think it'd be really good to go to the detail with councillors, so we're not asking these questions in 6 months' time, like where a toilet's going to be, or, what are we fixing to do. Right, I think we'll move through and we'll take that as an action to schedule a workshop, please, on those 2 matters, Di.
Yes, Chair.
So under 2.7, we've got the consent applications and consents granted. So just the stats on what's happened since our last committee meeting. So we've had 39 resource consents lodged, 31 have been granted since the last meeting, and 24 of those were for land use, which were largely housing consents in the rural zone, or where they've breached setback requirements. And we have had 6 that have been subdivisions, which were only ranging between 2 and 4 lots. So this is a pattern we're seeing quite a lot at the moment, is a lot of small carve-ups of property. So I guess while the property market is in demand, people are starting to think about what's happening with their spare land. On top of that, we have actually had 2 quite large subdivision applications come in too. So it's been a long time since those sorts of scale of applications have come into council, so it's looking positive for Westland. And we've met 100% of our 20-day legal timeframes.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you. So the next matter was the mining consent applications. So as discussed, we have a process in place that is working well. We actually have had a situation where it worked the other way around recently, where Destination Westland were approached for affected party approval, which actually should have sat with District Council anyway. And they very promptly notified us that an application had come in, and we worked through the process together. So that was really good that collaboration is working well. And then the last note that I've got on there is the other projects. So Coastal Hazard Adaption Network is a group that was pulled together for the first time by GNS Science. So they sponsored it on behalf of Ministry for Environment, and they paid for myself and one of the authors of the district plan to go up to Wellington and have a discussion around coastal hazard adaptation, on the basis that RMA reform will basically require that there be some consideration given to adaptation and movement away from hazards, as opposed to defending and fighting all the time. Some councils, many councils in New Zealand have done a huge amount of work in this space around what future potential rainfall and additional flooding and coastal erosion, potential sea level rise, all of those conversations, what that could look like on the ground and for communities and for our infrastructure, and considering our infrastructure planning and how we adapt any infrastructure that's under threat, but also how we place it better when we are putting in new infrastructure. Also around spatial planning for where we create areas that can be retreated to if necessary. So interestingly, there was a huge array. There was a mixture of scientists, planners. There were a lot of councils that have specialist hazard strategists that are there specifically to look at zoning, to look at adaptation methods, to look at requirements for infrastructure. Obviously, we're a little bit smaller than they are and don't quite have the same level of funding. But it was really interesting to have the conversations with them and to see how in depth some of their planning and strategies have got so far. We're obviously at a much lesser end of the scale. We've got district plan review is, I guess, causing us to now go and actually start measuring and marking out where we think those hazards might be that haven't been considered in the past. But I've been invited onto that group as into the oversight committee to start setting up this group and looking at creating a bit of an inventory where the likes of us smaller councils can obtain best practice information from the larger councils that have already done the process. So it's a bit of it's also a forum to look at being able to feed from the council level up into Ministry for Environment and make it clear to them when they're creating their strategies and policies and procedures that come out that there are on the ground effects for councils like us and what that implication is. So hopefully in future, giving us a stronger voice as a community of councils into those policies being developed.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you for your report. I wonder if it's worthwhile now the updated recommendations as a result of the workshop that was undertaken with Hokitika councillors and some of the Northern Ward councillors and the staff has come up with a concept plan design for Revel Street. I wonder if it's worth sharing that, because the updated recommendation is that the concept designs are approved and that staff continue with engagement and construction on that basis. So while you're getting ready to, or someone's getting ready to get that, so this committee can approve that resolution, I'll hand to Paul, who's got his hand up. You all right, Paul? Yep.
Yep. Sorry, I was finding the mute button. The just comment on that coastal hazard adaptation network thingamajiggy. I can't wait to see what they come up with for the likes of Island Bay and you know, some of these big cities that are sitting right on the waterfront. Because it's all very well them biting us, but let's see when it comes to the big places.
So some of the conversation that's been happening in those larger councils or councils with larger communities is a conversation around whether the council actually will do anything to be protecting those communities from natural hazards, which is a big turnaround from where New Zealand has been in the past. So there have been situations with some of the larger councils where they have said to the community, we will not be putting any structures in, we will not be defending. You decide whether you want to stay here or not. It's on you, basically. Or if you want to build here, you need to prove that you can do it in a way that you will either keep yourself safe, or you can keep yourself safe, or you can retreat, you know, up, have mobile buildings. So it's a big turnaround what some of the other councils are doing. So it's going to be interesting. I think that that's part of the beauty of having this network, is to see how their processes work and what works and what doesn't, really, before we enter into it ourselves.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question or comment, Paul?
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. It was just a comment.
You were amused and wondering.
I was.
So thank you very much. So, Fiona, thanks for the update. There's a lot that's probably not written on that report, but a lot of depth that's going on is behind a lot of that work, and you can see that there's real passion from this committee to advance a lot of that work as well and work with you. So let's hope we can do that in the near future. Right. So the recommendation from the workshop held is that this committee endorses these plans. So I'll hand over to Fiona to talk to them in relation to Revel Street, bearing in mind that the consensus of that working group or workshop was to go forward. So this is sort of administrative, really.
Thank you, Megan. So based on the workshop that we'd had previously, the outcomes were around having individual modular decks put together based around the eating areas, based around the sites or the shops that actually wanted them outside of their buildings or indicated that they would like to. On this plan, you can see there's a blue area that there's a potential loading bay area. I talked before about the different work streams. So we've got up at the Weld Street, Revel Street intersection, we've got a curb extension that has been on the cards anyway for in front of Take Note. And the idea there would be to narrow down that area so that it's a safer pedestrian crossing point. You'll all remember in the peak of tourist season when you've got busloads of people, everybody kind of pouring across that crossing anyway, but sort of going off in different directions. So it would help channel people. That would involve a raised cobblestone style crossing point to try and keep people in the one area so that it's just that little bit safer, and it will also, because it's raised, act as a speed pacifier. The other bonus of getting that curb extension work done is that Take Note itself is a very steep entrance into the shop doorway, and it would help alleviate that and make it a bit more of a manageable angle for wheelchairs and crutches and prams and the like. There is a sump that will have to go in there that will actually help the drainage in that area. We've got the deck in front of Sock World, which was something that actually was requested, and so that makes it a good place to put it. We've looked at, there was a conversation with Rachel from, no, sorry. There was an original conversation about moving the bike racks, which is something that has been shown. It's very hard to point at a screen, but thank you, Megan. Yeah, that's the area there. So the idea being that the bikes can come in from the footpath into the bike racks and out again without having any kind of obstruction with the street. There was an original idea around extending the next deck, but that has conversations around that have led us to believe that's not the best idea anymore. So we'll have these individual spots. There is, I'm just trying to think. So on that diagram, it does show the dragon teeth, or whatever they're called, the little triangles that are designed to slow traffic. It's likely that that won't eventuate if we're using raised crossings. The conversation when these plans went before the few from council, the subcommittee of this committee, was that the preference is that they're not there, so that it just cleans things up a little bit, and that's fine. If we can scroll down, please, Megan. This here is an idea of what it would look like at the Weld Street and Rebel Street intersection. So where the arrow is sitting at the moment is towards Weld Lane, and then to the left would be the extension outside the bookshop, and those two lines where the depiction is across the road would actually be the raised crossing, and then would have a deck on the right. One of the suggestions was to balance it, where you can see the gabion basket at the bottom of that decking is to put a gabion basket on the left side as well, in the current parking bay, and so that would create more seating space, and it would also create just a nicer entrance into Revel Street. And if you continue to scroll down, Megan, it just gives different examples of what the different decks could be in front of the individual shops. And then this is a proposal for looking at lighting down Rebel Street. So again, a different project stream. So town centre lighting is something that's been on the cards for Christmas lighting, but also upgrading lighting in general. And this is a concept of what could be put down there, with the idea of basically ferry lighting similar to Weld Lane, so it would blend in quite nicely being right at the corner. Was there something else as well, Megan? I can't remember if there was anything after that. Oh yes, sorry, the display boards. So yeah, the display boards would be used. These have actually been finished off, tidied up, painted, but we would have one at each end of Revel Street, one on each side of the road that would show what the concept is, so that as soon as we're underway, people know what's going on. The idea would be to get the decks built sort of off-site, have them built and then have them placed so that the construction's not happening on the roadway at the time. Yeah, any further questions? I'm not sure what you want to know, but that's the proposal.
Any sort of modifications or suggestions for modifications, it would be great to hear those as part of the workshop that's coming up. Yeah, from councillors. Paul.
Thank you. So good to see the Baldy chick in the concept plans there for a start. So thank you. These all look really flash, and I'm sure it'll look $1 million once it's in there, but I hope it doesn't cost anywhere near even the $100,000 that's mentioned. But I just have to say it's all got the look of permanency for what's supposed to be a trial.
So I guess
cobblestones and decks and raised pedestrian crossings, and and it does look rather permanent.
To clarify, the idea for town centre was to go through a renewals process and replace concrete with pavers in the long term anyway. That's something that is in the work stream, and the curb extension is something that was in the work stream as an intersection improvement. So those things would happen whether it's one way or not. The decks themselves are modular and can be removed, and so they could be used in another part of town if desired.
Okay, and just through the chair, just one other quick comment was someone's raised about the mobility car park that was taken away outside the bookshop, and where is that going to be, and when is that going to be reinstated somewhere?
So my understanding is that the difficulty at this, I'm not a roading designer, but my understanding is that the difficulty with putting that on Revel Street itself is because it's parallel parking. We don't have a space wide enough to create that at present. We can incorporate it if we're actually doing full design work later, but we certainly are allowing for more parallel parking, accessible parking when we're looking at doing the parking design going forward for the entire town centre. So I don't know that it's going to fit specifically on that block, but there will be something nearby.
Thank you, Fiona. Deputy Mayor Crothers, you indicated you would
just a question, Fiona. Is that going to use the existing planter boxes? They look quite similar in that plan. Is that the same one, using the same ones that are now there?
Yeah, so the idea would be to pull those in, get them dried out, stain them. So they were going to be stained originally, but it was a case of time and resources. Get those stained, and we will replant them with something a bit more full, with a bit more foliage.
There'll be a dark stain of some kind, will it?
It'll be to match the deck, and my understanding is that the deck's likely to match what already exists with Stella's deck, so that we've got continuity.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much for a very comprehensive report, Fiona. I'm sure aspects of this will be picked up as we discuss the town centre concept, but the recommendation is that the committee receive the report and that the committee accept the concept designs provided as Appendix 2 and approve that staff continue with engagement and construction on that basis. Someone prepared to move that?
Sorry, Latham, construction of what?
Fiona, do you want to talk to that? I understand it's as the plans were shared, circulated, the platforms, the curb extensions, the pedestrian crossings, and the light structures, albeit funded and planned for through different projects. It's kind of approving the concept in its entirety.
Yeah, that summarises it.
Approving the lot without costings.
It's approving the look, so the costing, the budgets have been approved to undertake the works. We're pulling it into one work stream, but it's getting the approval that is the concept that is favoured.
And just to clarify, Councillor Kennedy, the subcommittee that met has requested those costings be circulated as soon as they're available. So the procurement process would mean council has to accept those prices before they undertake the works. So as soon as those prices are in and known, we will also know them.
Yeah, but we can't approve construction of anything here without knowing that, can we? No, not really.
No, the expectation is that they were within budget, with an already approved budget.
Okay.
Sorry, just take a step back just to clarify. I think it was moved, His Worship the Mayor, and seconded by who seconded that resolution, sorry, or is there a seconder for the resolution? Councillor Davidson, was it you? I think you're muted, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry. I mean, it's I've just got to sustain because of the conflict of interest, but thank you.
So does that leave me?
Oh, sure. Councillor Kennedy, thank you. I moved his worship the Mayor, seconded Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour? Right, those against? And an abstention from Councillor Davidson. We have an urgent item on the agenda, which is the consideration of the erosion, and that's come to this committee as an urgent matter because it complies with section 46A of LGA, and particularly that we need to consider it now being urgent, affecting property. So I'll hand over to His Worship.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Councillor Davis and I walked this morning from the back of the beachfront hotel right down to Spencer Street, and the erosion, and we've taken a lot of photos and a lot of evidence on it. The erosion in a number of places now, the dune is no more than 3 metres wide. So there's and we're walking, and as we walked along the top, there were pieces, flax bushes dropping down, and we've got 3 days of this. So we're not going to be able to do anything in the short term. But the matter's urgent, and I'd like the committee to authorise the writing to the regional council again. Look, they're down there most days, but it's becoming a real problem from what I can see. Councillor Davidson, you're with me. I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely, Your Worship. And there was residents that have come out, and they have concerns with these rough seas coming in, and there's debris sort of coming over into their backyard, and they're scared about it, and rightfully so. And I think it's only fair to those residents that they're protected, just like we are behind this engineered seawall down in Beach Street here.
Okay, so what His Worship's asking is that the committee authorise the CE to write to the Regional Council asking for urgent consideration of a solution for the erosion matters that are occurring on the beach, Hokitika Beach. Is that correct? So the Regional Council is ultimately responsible for this work, so they'll need to work through their processes. But I think that is the direction understood by the committee, and are the committee comfortable to proceed? It's moved by His Worship the Mayor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Davidson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The resolution's carried. Simon, are you all right to write that letter or correspondence?
No problem, Your Chair.
Thank
It's
you.
fine.
Thank you very much. Press the wrong button, sorry team. We're at the conclusion of the public part of the meeting. I'd like to thank those of you who have tuned in. The concept plans that were displayed briefly will be made available to the public in due course. I'm sure they'll be featuring in the paper tomorrow or before the end of the week, depending how fast the paper can move. Or if not, early next week, and there'll be press releases containing that imagery as well. So thank you for the public for tuning in, and I'll now ask that a councillor move that we move into public excluded. Councillor Kennedy, seconded Councillor Davidson. All those in favour? Aye. The resolution's carried. Thank you very much for tuning in, to the members of the public. Thanks to the staff for facilitating this and the councillors. We now need to end the live stream, pause the recording. There is another